Hi, this is Owen and Conway, the gardening guys. My name is Conway. Today's topic we're going to talk about is lime, especially where we are in the lower mainland in Vancouver, BC. We get a lot of rainfall. So areas where we get a lot of rainfall, our soils traditionally tend to be very, very acidic. When the soil is very, very acidic, it can grow a lot of acid-loving plants, like for instance, blueberries, azaleas, potatoes. On the other hand, when soils are very, very alkaline, areas where you get very limited rainfall, let's say like on the prairies, or maybe in California, the soils tend to be what we call alkaline. But here, because of our acidity, because of all that rain, we have to sort of lime to allow the plants a proper, what we call a proper pH. pH is usually defined as a scale from 1 to 14, 7 being neutral, which can actually be tested by getting a soil test kit. We like to be sort of in the area between 6 to 6.5. In that particular area, pH, when it's optimum, it allows the plants to absorb nutrients more efficiently, rather than being either in a deficiency where it's lacking, or in some cases it can be also toxic. So because our rain around here right now, our soils around here can easily be on a scale of 4.5 to 5, maybe even 5.5 in some areas where we are on the lower mainland. So liming is definitely one of the things that we do here on the coast. We do need liming in a lot of our areas, whether it be in the lawn to allow the grass to grow more better, and also to discourage moss from growing. It can also be used in some of your vegetable gardens and maybe in some of your flower beds. Generally speaking, depending on your soil testing, your vegetable and flower beds may be done maybe every second or third year. If we're doing our lawns, that can be done almost quite regular. In some cases, either once or maybe even twice a year, depending on what the condition of the garden or the lawn is and what your soil testing is. When we look at lime, they usually come in basically two different types that we basically offer, or basically three. The finer the line, the faster it works. So one of the lines that we don't usually carry right now is what we call hydrated lime. You see a lot of those being used in vegetable farmers. It's almost like cornstarch. When you apply it right now, it flies all over the place. It even gets in your eyes. It can be very, very caustic. So that's what we call sort of your lime, or your hydrated lime. When we get into your lime that has the word dolo, meaning dolomite, it contains magnesium. So not only does it have the lime, which has a calcium, which also makes your soil more alkaline, but it also has a magnesium, which is also important to sort of help green up your plants. So it is in some ways part of the fertilizing program that we only need very small amounts of it. You see in this particular tray that we have here, we have regular garden lime, which we call dolomite lime. Next to that, in the prilled one, we have our Dolo Prill. So this is basically lime that's basically been ground up, but it's basically been prilled. It looks like a different color, but they're using a particular binding agent. So when this particular lime, the Dolo Prill is basically subjected to sort of water, it breaks into finer particles and it works a lot more faster. As opposed to your dolomite lime, that will work, but it tends to be a little bit more slower than your Dolo Prill. But in both, in case of ease of application, I always recommend the Dolo Prill, which is this one here on my hand here, which is a darker color. The dolomite lime is also very popular with a lot of other people right now for it, because it has that magnesium that's in it. When you're applying lime, it's very, very important that you use some sort of an apparatus. In this particular case, we're using a spreader. There are different types of spreaders that we do offer right now, and spreader is basically to allow an individual to apply lime more evenly over the area. Yes, you can use it by hand. I don't usually recommend it because it's usually not very, very even, and especially if you're handling certain types of products, especially fertilizer and things of that nature, you really don't want to come in contact with that close to yourself, even by hand or inhaling it. So in this case right now, I have a hand spreader. This one that's actually battery operated. It basically broadcasts it out in a very large arc area, either by about 1 to maybe 2 feet on either side of the thing. The other one that we have on this side here right now is what we call a drop spreader. So a drop spreader is basically, as you move, it basically drops only between the wheels. It doesn't go beyond the wheels. It only drops between the wheels in there. Next to that, we have a broadcast spreader. It's the same thing too right now. It basically broadcasts the products at least 2 feet on either side of the fertilizer spreader. A lot of these fertilizer spreader works depending on how fast you walk. You want to sort of walk in a very nice walking pattern, and you don't want to be very, very quick in terms of your walking right now. It's just a gentle type of walking type of thing. With lime, as a general rule of thumb, it should actually be incorporated into your soil and watered in. So rain is definitely a big advantage if it's applied very early in the season or very, very late in the season. so that it can actually have time to work. It is not temperature sensitive, so you can basically apply it almost any time of year. So is there any comments?
The most common question is, when are you going to apply your fertilizer after the lime?
So that's a very common one that we usually get when people sort of ask in terms of liming and fertilizing. Generally speaking, it's suggested you try to keep at least a period of either 10 to 14 days between liming and fertilizing, whichever one you do. So it doesn't matter which order it is, as long as there are at least a bit of a gap in between there, rather than doing them all at the same time. It is believed that if you do liming and fertilizer at the same time, that there is some chemical reaction that may cause some sort of cancellation between the products right now. But generally speaking, keep it separate.
Sounds good. The other question is, people when they are applying the lime, I believe they should remember that the pace they are starting with in the beginning should be the same pace all around till you finish the job, because you can go fast on one side and slow on the other side, and then the spreading is not even. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the idea is that when you're applying a spreader, whether you're pushing it or whether it's drop spreader or you're broadcasting it, it should be done in an even pace so that you get uniformity of the product. Bearing in mind, of course, that any of the fertilizer that is basically being broadcast, which is thrown out in a broadcasting motion, you want to make sure that that doesn't get too far into, let's say, the sidewalk or the driveway, because you want to make sure that the product goes in the area in question. So by walking more steadily, yes, it's very, very important so that you get uniformity in terms of applying product. It's also important also for people to understand also that depending on your testing, you should always try to determine the area that you're basically using, and therefore you can actually determine how much product you need to do the job. So I always encourage people to sort of measure out your area prior to doing it, and then that way they can calculate how much fertilizer, how much lime you need to sort of do the job, depending on, let's say, on what the soil tested.
Sounds good. I don't have any more questions. I guess we'll tune in for the next time. And
Go green.
go green.